Here we go, John.
All right, we're ready to begin. This is the planning board meeting, Village of Rhinebeck, May 2nd, 2023. First item on the agenda, you'll notice that David Miller's not here, unfortunately. First item on the agenda is Terrapin Restaurant for, I assume, amended site plan.
Yes.
So you want to explain what you're up to?
Sure.
So, Warren Smith Architect, here with Josh Kroner, the chef and owner of Terrapin. And I guess prior to the issuance of a temporary C of O, I was asked to go and look at any deviations in the site, potentially from what was submitted and approved by the planning board sometime last year, maybe longer. And there were some minor things, all of which were noted on the plan, some things that were added, propane tanks in the back between the trash enclosure and the shed. But specifically with regard to the landscaping, we had planters that were there along the east side of the pavilion. Essentially, they're concrete planters with plant material been installed, I believe. And they were there both to provide some screening, but also to protect the pavilion and diners within it from vehicles that are perhaps inexpertly maneuvered by their drivers. And I had overlooked the fact that we had a planter actually in front of the building between the south facade and Livingston Street. And I'm not quite sure why it was there, because there were never going to be cars parked in that location. But I was so unaware that we had that there that when I went to look at the site, I didn't even notice that was missing as an item. Because it didn't occur to me it should be there. And then I was kind of surprised when I went back and looked at the plan and said, why the heck did we have a planter there? Anyway, so we're here to request some amendments to the plan reflecting as-built conditions for the most part. We've removed the planter on the south side of the pavilion because we have plant material anyway filling that area between the sidewalk and the front of the pavilion there on Livingston. So if the board felt that the plants that we had in the planter needed to be on that side as well, we could certainly plant them there, but I would think they'd be in the ground rather than a raised planter. We're proposing a substitution for one of the plants in the planter. We had blue oak grass and rose of Sharon in each of the planters, and rose of Sharon looks good when it's in bloom, and you know, kind of during the warm months. Then the winter it loses everything, it doesn't look like much. So Josh, in consultation with his landscape installer, has proposed that we replace it with a variety of boxwood called Winter Gem, which has sort of a variegated leaf and it retains the leaves and remains some color and screening ability throughout the year. So wherever we had Rose of Sharon, we're proposing that as a substitute. We're keeping the blue oak grass, and then we had a third plant material called as juniper. We're keeping that where it was shown on the landscape plan. So this site plan sort of is the overall plan, and the next sheet down has both the utilities plan and a landscaping plan. And if you drag it over a bit, that's the landscape plan, and there are symbols there within the planting boxes for the plant material, and then there's a key just above the image there. It's not, but yeah, there's a little planting schedule at the top. So that's a proposed change, and I'm not sure how much of that has been installed at this point. Some of it has, I think.
I mean, we didn't install the boxwoods and the blue oak grass, because actually when we first were going for our CO, all that stuff wasn't even available yet at the...
It wasn't in the nursery yet.
Yeah, it wasn't in the nursery.
Right, so Josh posted a bond to cover the cost of
I mean,
that.
we stuck some forsythias in there just to have something to be in there, but there was just, like, we couldn't find it anywhere. So I was trying to do exactly what was there so I could just get the CO, but I realized also with that planter that it just didn't make sense there. And I spoke to Warren about it. He said, there's no planter in the plan. I'm like, yeah, there is. You better have a look at it. But yeah, so I mean, but other than that, I mean, I think the boxwood would be better than the Rose of Sharon. It's not really much of a change, but as you know, if it's in the site plan, I have to have it, so we have to come back here to make sure everything is exactly the way that it's going to come up.
Right, so we always had some seasonal plantings in the area between the sidewalk there and the front of the pavilion on Livingston Street. We're just proposing to extend those back to the front of the pavilion, but again, if there's a sense, right, if we need additional taller elements there, I mean, truthfully, the lattice on the pavilion does a pretty good job of screening, you know, both diners inside and so forth, people walking by. But if there's a sense that we need something taller there, we could certainly take, again, the same plant material that are in those planters and put them in front of the pavilion there to create something taller behind the seasonal annuals. And that's really, you know, we're looking to you for guidance on that. We have an existing tree that on the 2002 site plan referred to it as a red spire pear. Yes, there is a tree there. I can't tell by looking at it whether it's a red spire pear or something else. Josh is under the impression it's a crab apple.
Well, it's not a crab apple. It's like a golden apple. They're very good
Some sort
apples,
of an apple,
actually,
yeah.
because people eat them all the time. It's a great tree, but it's definitely a sweet apple tree.
Okay, and we had called for a crab apple also in that planting bed just to the left of that, and I think it would have crowded that existing tree, which is, you know, larger than the little symbol suggests there. So we're proposing eliminating that tree. There is a street tree further down there, you know, toward the corner. Right, that's an existing taller street tree. But we're suggesting we don't need yet another tree there, right there in front of the pavilion. It's better, probably appreciated in person, looking at it, and some of you may have had a chance to walk by and look at it. But, you know, if you again have another sense about that, we can certainly revisit it. But certainly wanted to get your review and approval of amendments to the site plan, so Josh can get things installed and get a final CFO as opposed to keep operating under a temporary CFO. But I'm happy to answer any questions or address any comments that the board has.
I went over there today, and I have some concerns. Over here is an existing maple tree that's not existed. Over here is another one that's a telephone pole. I don't know how many feet up it is. It's just cut off, and it's got little, you know, it's not on the plans, and it's not attractive. The grease thing is, it's just out in the open and it's dirty. I really think that needs to kind of be screened somehow. I don't know if bring a fence with a gate or something, but it's not attractive. The first thing you notice is this big metal box, you know, that's greasy, that's just sitting there. It says existing maple tree to be removed. I believe it's been removed.
Yes, but that note that dates from before that.
Okay, and then
That was
over-
actually an apple tree also.
Okay, and then over here, there's two heat pumps that aren't indicated that are quite visible from the sidewalk on Route 9. I think they need to be screened somehow.
Yeah, I mean, they were there, you know, before we did any of this work, so they're sort of,
They're not on the,
no, they're not, I understand.
and they're visible, and our standard is, if you can see it from the street, it needs to be fenced, shrubed, camouflaged somehow. I mean, it's wonderful technology. I just had 6 put on my house, but I had to work with the company to camouflage them, and these are just there.
Mhm.
And I believe we need to address that. I don't have any problems with the change of the landscaping and I think it's good. I think the building is beautiful.
I agree, I think the building came out really nice.
Good. Josh, do you have any comments or thoughts about either the grease repository, which I assume has to be accessed fairly regularly?
Yeah, I mean,
Or
you know, the other option is we can have barrels. I mean, it's just less. The problem is, like, we were having like a local person with barrels, and that was just a mess. They were just spilling oil everywhere. So we went back to using that kind of dumpster thing. But I mean, I feel like it's black and out of the way. I mean, I haven't had anybody complain about it before.
That's sort of a focal point of the driveway as you come in, the dumpster and then that. The dumpster's at least screened and
would it be feasible to put a length of fence in front of it so
I
you
guess
don't
we
see
could
it
put
from
a fence
Livingston?
there.
A fence with a gate of some kind, so it can be accessed.
You don't have to get a vehicle back to it to empty it, right? Or how is that emptied?
It's emptied with a truck.
So do they have a pump?
It's like one of the dumpster trucks that hooks it and dumps it behind, I think, something like that.
I don't know.
I think
I
that's,
see any hooks on it, but I didn't really look at it.
yeah, it
that
has big
close.
hooks on the side.
Oh, does it?
And it picks it up and brings it over. has like big pegs that come out the side of it.
Is it feasible to get in there with the light pole?
The light is a lot closer to the shed.
Yes, like we didn't have an updated survey, and I'm working off the 2002 site
The
plan.
light is
so
probably only 2
unfortunately-
feet from the shed.
What's that?
The light's about 2 feet from the
2
shed.
feet from the shed?
Yeah, it's over to the
It's
right
closer
more,
to
so
the
you
shed,
could get
so
in there and flip it
vehicle
up.
could get in there?
The way
I
it
mean,
is
yeah,
now.
because they get in there now. I mean, basically, you're just saying put a fence around it.
Right, well, it has to be gates, so they could be open and the vehicle could get in there, right?
Yeah, I mean, I imagine I could hang it off of the corner post of the new fence and then just stick one 6 feet over, something like that, or whatever it is. It's not very big, that dumpster.
No,
So I think that's reasonable, and I think it's certainly to put some screening around the condensers for the heat pump to find. The trees you were mentioning, Michael, I think they're lot line trees, and I'm,
They're on his side of the fence, the existing fence is there.
there's like a new fence actually that I think
Right.
Jeff Scales put up, right? I don't know if.
What's that?
There's a new fence along
fence over here.
the
Yeah,
east
that
side,
fence,
right?
right.
And did Jeff put that up?
The fence, he did.
Yeah, okay. And those trees are, I didn't think there was room on your side for trees, so I'm kind of surprised.
They're in the parking lot, they're not shown there, but they're on his side.
They're behind the parking spaces, though.
Well,
It might not even be on my property.
I don't know, because we don't,
I
I
don't know.
looked at them, they both look alive. One's suffering, but it's still alive, it's sending out
it's
shoots.
carved, it's like, and
And it's sending out
then
shoots.
it's got all shoots at the top, like, bad haircut.
Maybe the top like broke off at some point and it's trying to regenerate. I mean, that happens a lot with trees, you know. Anyway, what is your recommendation or request for that?
I don't know, it was kind of strange to see a tree this big, and then it just cut off X amount of
We
feet
cut
way up. and
we
then-
cut it down and didn't remove it because we wanted it to grow back. And Dave Hughes said that it would grow back. And it was a lot of rot above that part that we cut out. So I want to have a tree there because it's providing shade and
Yeah,
it's
unless they're dead, I would leave them. If it dies, then,
not dead. I do tree work because if there's a dead tree, it's a danger to my parking lot. It's a danger to people. I mean, I'm certainly going to take care of that. But that tree neither tree has any danger of falling, for sure.
I have a few things, if you're finished.
Yep,
One was, I would vote to keep the tree in here. It's not that close to this. This is a pretty compact tree. It's not like a huge tree.
It's been
It's
trimmed
pretty
a lot, yeah.
compact. I still think every street tree is a good tree. And so I would leave a tree there. If you put one in that's good enough size, it's not gonna screen your pavilion, and you could put in a type of tree that filters as opposed to, and I'm not sure crabapple is the right, because it puts litter on the ground,
Right.
but flowering trees.
Many of them do, as you
Yeah.
know.
But,
I really want to keep that space open because I feel like it's so beautiful, the pavilion itself, and I feel like sticking a tree there is just going to block it from the street, and I don't have any desire to block it from the street. I want
still think
people to
you're
be
gonna
able to,
see the pavilion myself.
I want people to be able to look out onto the street. I want people from the sidewalk to be able to look in and interact with the pavilion,
If
but
you
to put
pick-
a tree in between, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
If you put a tree that is branched far enough up, it provides a canopy and summer shade for your pavilion without blocking views of the road
But
or
we have
of the pavilion.
We have a big tree right there. There is a big tree, the apple tree.
Yeah, well then, if you put another one here, then it starts to create a street tree effect rather than an isolated tree effect. We approved it, I would leave it. That's my vote. The second thing is the shed. We had a long discussion, remember, about the shed. There's a provision in the special sensitivity overlay zone that it has to have residential setbacks.
Right.
That's the only requirement of the SSO in the village center. In the village district, you have to have 5 feet from a outbuilding to a property line. So we talked about moving that shed over so that you would be compliant with the code. You're free to go to the ZBA and ask for a variance, but I don't see how this board, especially after approving a site plan with a 5-foot setback off the rear and off the front, off the side, could reverse ourselves on that. So that's number 2. And then number 3, You know, we talked about junipers or some sort of low evergreen along the frontage.
Right.
To provide some sort of screening for the parking lot.
Right.
Are you still anticipating those?
Yeah, we've added juniper actually to that planting bed right there.
There's already junipers in
There
there.
was oak grass and we added juniper to that in
Okay,
the planting schedule.
but this one right here is not there, that's paved. Your driveway is 30 feet across by my pace, not 24, and this is paved here.
That corner.
Yeah. So, we never would approve a 30-foot wide driveway at the village center.
Yeah, I didn't realize it hadn't been narrowed, because I mean, that was, the whole thing was reconfigured.
Yes. So for some reason, it's got paved with a big wide mouth. And you can't plant anything there because this is asphalt now. So I would like to see that narrowed to the 24 feet, which is what we asked for originally. And a low bush there that wouldn't block, you know, the
Sight
view.
lines and everything, yeah.
But enough that
Are
it
you
would
aware of
set
any
my-
reason why that couldn't?
I mean, I guess the contractor did it that way. I mean, I have no idea, but because of the way that he did it, the access to the sidewalk is easy, I imagine. Because there's something there where you had, there was a little bit of landscaping and then another spot. Okay, so he just left that all open, is what he did.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I would suggest we should stick by the site plan on this, on that, and on the tree. You know, it's always better that if you want to do an amendment, you come to us first without
Absolutely.
building it and then
Right.
say, oh, well, it's as-built and
Right.
what do we do?
Right.
Well, sometimes we have to stick with our guns and say, you do what you were approved to do.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm fine with the shed, obviously, and that other thing, you know, that corner, I mean, we can do that, but I really think the tree is, I just think it's negative for me. Like, you know, those other things, obviously, if we're going to code or, you know, that one thing with the 24, I just really would like to not have a tree there. After seeing the design and after seeing how it's built and how it looks, I just would not want a tree there. That's like the whole thing with the planter. I was like, why would we want a planter there?
I agree on the planter, but not on the tree. The other thing I wanted to ask about is you made a bigger dumpster area. And it shows 3 parking spaces here as opposed to 4, but there are 4 out there.
Well,
Because I think you moved this over,
right.
right?
Well, the stripes are there, but when I went out and measured it, and it looks.
Oh, yeah,
like,
see, what happened was that, I guess when he made that plan, they put the stripes in the wrong spot.
Well, there are 4 spaces there,
Yeah,
right?
because that's not the way it looks.
Exactly. So you end up with the same number of parking spaces. That's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah,
Correct?
right.
Are there 4 full spaces there?
Yeah, because what happened is that the way that actually was, there were 3 lines, and it was, the space all the way on the left was like a space and a half.
This one.
Right.
Yeah.
That was a space and a half, and the one next to the fence was obviously too small.
Right.
So we just, it was, when they set the lines the first time,
It looked to
whoever.
me like this area was pushed over so that there's another
No,
space.
it wasn't that, it was just done poorly. It was whoever striped it, you know what it was? They just put this stripe in a way that there was no parking spot in between the fence and the stripe, and there should have been. So we had to have it restriped.
Yeah,
So now there's four spots, so I just had it restriped.
right.
So
So
that's-
even though you have a bigger dumpster, you have the same
And I guess
exact
when
number
he went,
of approved parking spaces.
when Warren went out there to look and do the as-built, it looked like that, and I think that was why it's reflected like that. But that's not the way it is on the,
Well, I mean, if there's room for 4 spaces, I'm happy to modify the plan to show 4 spaces, so,
Yeah, I counted 15 spaces, which is what you were asked to
the
do.
total number, right.
Yeah. And it makes it a little tight getting out of that one last space, but you can do it because
Yeah, there's
that
the backup,
aisle
there's the
is,
backup space there.
there's aisle is a little wider than 24
Right.
back there. So I think it works, the parking. I'm not happy about the size of the dumpster and the way the dumpster sort of exceeds the height of the dumpster enclosure. Doesn't really enclose it. So if you could put a shorter dumpster in there, it would be better looking. But it is, it functions as a wooden shield. So I would stick my guns on those 3 items. And I agree, if you can see the heat pumps in the back, those should probably be shielded as well.
So we'll need to come back with a proposal, or, how we're gonna do that for the board.
I mean, there is an existing fence that goes to, I don't know, about here and just ends. And then there's the 2 heat pumps going there, so you could extend that fence down, bring it in. If you didn't like the height, you could slope it down to some degree, so it's at least the height of the heat pumps.
There used to be a fence there, and it got taken down somewhere along the line. That's
Yeah, I
my
mean, I have photos of it from some years ago, and there wasn't a fence then.
Is that right?
At some point, there may well have been.
Yeah. I don't remember that area being the way it was, but maybe the hedge was less trim.
It could be, right?
Any other comments?
I could make just a few general comments, and, I'll acknowledge that I wasn't on the board when we first came in for this proposal, so I'll give you my general reactions to a few of the things that Michael and John have said. I've had the same experience with the heat pumps since they've been on the building, driving south on Route 9, they're very visible, and the line height as well that goes with them. So I'm absolutely in favor of anything you can do just to take those down quite a few notches. It's just such a beautiful building, and you really notice the heat pumps more than you notice the building at times, especially in the winter. So I would absolutely encourage that. And then, my general experiences, and I think you did a great job with the pavilion and all the work you've done so far. And, my general experience with your parking lot in general is that, you're privileged to have this parking lot, a restaurant with parking right next to the building. It's sort of rare in a village setting. But I've always felt it, you can feel the dual purpose of the parking lot, right? There's a functional aspect to it. There's grease, there's dumpsters, there's propane tanks, and then at the same time, it's in a way the front entry to your building, right? People, that might be the first experience they have when they come to Terrapin for dinner, and they park there, so you're intermingling your clientele with a lot of that service aspect. So, based on that, just observation personally, I'm absolutely in favor of the things that have been brought up tonight. Of course, moving the shed to the 5-foot setback, and then anything that could be done just more thoughtfully around screening in terms of the grease, maybe something to do with the propane tanks, maybe even considering putting them underground if that proves to be maybe financially more
It's
beneficial.
not possible.
No, can't do it.
But if we had screening there for the grease receptacle, that will also screen the propane.
Would also screen the propane tank, so, maybe something thoughtful.
And while those weren't on the plan, those have been there for 20 years.
No, I'm just
So it's
giving you.
not like they just popped up.
Oh, I thought there was, someone made a comment tonight that there was some new additions, and that
Well,
was.
those weren't shown on our plan previously.
They've been there for 20 years.
Yeah, there were a number of utilities in
I
there.
put those in when
Now,
I,
I was under the impression, because you have propane tanks over in the enclosure, that those were gonna be moved over.
Right.
And all the propane was gonna be enclosed.
I
in
need
that.
all 8 tanks.
Well, that might be, but in your site plan, it didn't show that.
Rick, when I took over the building 20 years ago, there was the 4 tanks. But we had, we put in a heat system that was propane, so we needed 4 more tanks. It was, yeah, like,
Well, I think if you screened them, everybody would be happy.
Yeah, I think that there's obviously a relationship between the dumpster screening and what could be done around the propane tanks and the grease and the shed. I think there's some thoughtful, hopefully not terribly expensive solution that could be.
see, the problem too is like, once we move that shed over 5 feet, there might not be enough room for that. I don't even know, I'll have to see.
Well, it might be that it provides the anchor for the other side of the
It is the
screening.
screening, right, or,
Definitely gonna have to move that light post for sure.
Yeah, the light post would have to be moved, but that was anticipated when we made the approval.
so that, and then with respect to the landscaping, I agree on the planter certainly. You did mention moving away from some of the perennials that would be in the planter in your cover letter to maybe some more annuals on the ground there.
You know,
On the south
you
side.
guys are familiar with my landscaping. I mean, I feel like I have the best landscaping in town. I spend a lot of money for a really top-notch landscaper who changes what I have out there. I'm constantly have flowers, and that's certainly what I would do with that space, and that's what I want to do. I like to showcase it. Like that whole stretch along Livingston, we're always swapping out different flowers, and that's the way I see it. Like, to have, to me, Rose of Sharon, and no offense, but I mean juniper. At the time that we got this, I mean, Warren, your plan was beautiful. I'm not just, that was one detail I didn't even really think about. I was like, whatever, at that point, I just wanted to get it done. But now that I'm thinking about the flowers, like junipers and rose of Sharon is not really, it's not like what I do. I do much more colors and all kinds of stuff. Like I'll put mums in the fall and, you know, do lots of stuff there where I can just keep it green in the winter even, you know, by putting, you know, temporary evergreen type stuff there. I mean, just to make the space look good. I just think being limited by specific plants like that, especially in the front, I mean, you know, what if we put boxwoods, I think that'll be okay on the side, but with, it was the, what was it, grasses? Boxwoods,
Yes,
grasses.
grass,
I mean, the grasses
right.
will die, but there'll be the boxwoods in the winter, which will be okay. But I think the front, like that's the same thing with the tree. I just want that to be like kind of a showcase for, you know, it gives me the ability to be artistic and, you know, make it beautiful. And I just think the tree, especially an apple tree, there's an apple tree right next to it. There's apple all over the ground in the fall.
I agree. No apple.
It's,
John's voting for no
Well,
apples.
we weren't under impression the other tree was an apple.
Right.
but on the plan it says an apple. But
Yeah, and I'm not disagreeing. I think you do a nice job with your seasonal rotations, and there's life and there's color, and I think it's part of the brand. So therefore, I'm in support of the removal of the planter and the switch away from the perennial species to annuals. And I was going to offer just a slight modification to John's proposal, and that is, you know, maybe something like an understory tree, you know, something just loose like a dogwood or something there, gives you the visibility back and forth from the pavilion, but gets us
I
a
mean,
tree that would
dogwoods
do
still
well in
are,
that
you
situation.
know, I mean, it's like we're going to put a tree, it's going to take years to kind of get big and bushy, but, you know, dogwoods definitely, I mean, they're nice right this time of year, but, you know, it's just going to be a leafy tree in the middle of everything.
Yeah, but most trees are going to be a leafy tree. for
Which is
most
why I
of
don't,
the-
which is why I don't want a tree.
Yeah.
I just want it to be
But
open so I can showcase my pavilion. I don't want to have anything in front of the pavilion there.
Dogwoods are very nice in the sense that they have a very
Multi-stem
interesting
leaves.
branch pattern. And they're not like dense trees, they're filtery sort of trees. So they would provide some filtered shade to the south side of the building and still not block the view.
Yeah,
And they're very light and airy, and if you get a decent sized one to start with, it'll be above the pavilion, you know, visibility
yeah.
within a few years.
You could certainly prune it. I just think it adds a little bit of interest there. It softens
I
it
mean, it's
just
going to be a
enough.
small tree. I'm not going to be
Yeah.
able to put a big tree.
No,
I mean, already I've added another $20,000 today to this project. So, you know, it's already cost me well over $400,000. Obviously I do well, but I mean, you know, I'm not made out of money and I'm certainly feeling the crunch of this.
All I'm asking is you did what you were approved to do on those three items.
I understand the tree's not going to break my bank at all. It has nothing to do with money or even, that would be simple. Be like, put a tree there. I'm just kind of trying to tell you why I don't want a tree. It's not because I don't want to do the work. I want to be able to have that as a space to showcase the pavilion. I feel like the tree is just going to muddle what I'm trying to do. I want it to, you know, when you walk past, I just want to see it. I don't want to have to like look at a tree in front of the pavilion. I want the pavilion to be as open as possible. I mean, that's my personal opinion. Obviously, you guys, you know, are the arbiters of these things, but, you know.
Yeah, but to be fair, we're eliminating the planter, and there was a tree, so you go to no planter, no perennial tall species, to annuals, which were presumably lower, to an open and airy dogwood, you know, multi-stem dogwood that could be pruned. I think it's a win from where you were previously, both in terms
Oh,
of
yeah, I mean,
opportunity.
certainly, but that's why I came back to the board, was to get that changed. I mean, I didn't notice the tree. I wasn't focused on that. I didn't notice the planter in front. I mean, there was a couple things that I was more focused on when I was trying to get this thing going. I mean, I was at 5 meetings, I think, in a row to get this done, and I was just, at that point, really trying to get it done, and it's my own fault, but I didn't notice that there was a tree. I didn't think about it that way. I didn't realize that Warren had stuck another tree. I never would have wanted that. It wouldn't have been on that plan. Nobody would even have thought of a tree. But, you know, now there's a tree on the plan, and, you know, now that I have to look at what I have and what I've built, I realize that that's definitely not the direction I would want to go for the decor. which, I should think would be something I would have control over. I mean, whether or not somebody thinks a tree is beautiful or not, the building is, without a doubt, consistent with the original building. I mean, Warren has done an excellent job in tying the two structures together. I mean, it's something that looks great. It is such an improvement from what was there before, that parking lot. I've done so much with that. And I'm just asking to be allowed to kind of use that space to kind of highlight that. That's all I want with that. And, it's just more of my own ability to be creative with that front space. I look at it as a canvas almost that's in front of that's the way I've always looked at the corner of the building and why we've always done so much. And I've loved working with the landscaper and coming up with different plans and topiaries and all the other fun stuff that he's done. And, I see this as a new space for me to work with that way. And I just don't want to have a big tree in my canvas. I've said enough. I mean, obviously I don't want to take your time anymore.
I'll throw out an option. A tree here instead.
On the corner?
Here,
Sure.
street tree.
You got a tree. I don't mind that at all.
That way you sort of have 1, 2, 3. It creates more of a cadence rather than having two together.
Yeah, no
When
problem.
you're saying a street tree, are you seeing it between the sidewalk and the street?
Yeah,
Okay.
Especially if the other two trees behind it are questionable for the future.
Yeah.
Gives them
Right,
a
right.
start.
and I think this property has 2 trees out along the strip, so, as I remember.
And what type of tree would you like? Dogwood?
Well, unfortunately, if it's in the public right-of-way,
We're
we
not
have
allowed
to
to.
defer to the street tree committee. So,
Right.
they will tell you what they think is appropriate. We don't get to say what goes there. We can say what goes here.
The
Could
tree
be many,
committee
many
has,
choices.
they have a list of recommended trees to avoid the power lines and things that'll survive in the.
And they may even plant it for you,
environment,
if you get on the spring list or something.
Maybe, right.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
I like street trees. So I don't like to give them up when I have them. Is that okay with other people?
I absolutely agree, and I think that's a much better idea because it will, with the other existing tree there and the one in the front, it will soften from a streetscape the impact of the parking lot,
Yeah, I think so
which
too.
is in your face. Did we say that the entry needs to be the originally planned 24-foot width?
That would be my, yeah, it's really wide right now.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Warren, your plan shows 24 feet from parking space to parking space with the driveway narrower than
So
that.
it's slightly narrower.
So is that not what's there today? It's wider than 24 feet
Oh, yeah.
parking space to parking space, and then the driveway is?
and the asphalt goes all the way to here,
Uh-huh.
and I think it goes to about here.
Which would suggest that it's even limited the depth of those parking spaces on the left there.
I don't know that that's, see, the thing is, like, big trucks pull in there. And I would hate to narrow it. 'Cause
Well,
it'll
that's
just-
why I thought 24 was, the width of the driveway is like what we usually use for turning radius.
Right.
A truck can pull in there. It's not a big parking lot in which you're gonna have cars coming out all the time.
I have to look at it because I'm not 100% sure, like, how big it is. I didn't realize that wasn't done to the plans. I mean, I know my contractor on his own just didn't do the parking or the spot next to the handicap spot because there was an elevation. He didn't want to do it.
I know, I saw that, but you ended up getting it in there. It's
Well,
kind of
yeah,
odd because it's
I
on,
made him do it because
Yeah.
I said, it's in the plan, you gotta do it. I didn't, at that time, I could have made him do all that other stuff to widen or narrow, make it more narrow, but I didn't realize it. I thought that it was done to the plan. I just noticed that he hadn't put that,
yeah. I think it's such an improvement over what it used to be, that these things will make a difference. The narrower throat, the street tree, the proposed plantings that you're proposing on there. I think all that is an improvement. And I think the parking lot came out relatively good.
Certainly cleaned up from what it was.
Yes,
the key for keeping it clean is that little area that I put in the back. because there's the overflow from the kitchen of all this stuff that was always in my parking lot.
Yeah.
And now I have a fence,
there.
now I have a fenced-in space so that it's not visible to anybody. It's so much better.
Yeah.
That's a huge improvement.
And the same thing could happen if you put a fence across there.
Yeah, we'll have to figure that out with the shed to move that. There's enough room to move it, but definitely we have to,
Yes, the light's the only thing that really
light
is.
has to
There's a
move.
picnic table there, you're gonna have to reconfigure that.
oh, that, yeah, that doesn't have to be there.
Yeah,
That was actually out front during COVID,
or was it?
and it came from my house. I could just bring it back to my house. And then they just threw it back there when we didn't, because we had like that emergency order where we had expanded our front seating, but then we had to take it down, so we just removed the table and threw it back there.
So otherwise, the pavilion's working, you getting the crowds in there and that sort of thing?
I mean, to some extent, I mean, we had a little hiccup with we were supposed to have vinyl panels to kind of keep it warm. They didn't come. They came, but they were the wrong size. So so without the vinyl panels, it's cool in there at this time of year. But I haven't sat it that much. I mean, I had a really good event for the chamber. We did an event, Taste of Rhinebeck. You know, it was really nice. We had a lot of people out there.
I think when the weather warms up a little bit.
I'm sure we're
it'll
going to
be
do
a really
okay.
nice
there.
spot.
I have no doubt.
Because I've never sat out in front. I'm not a person who likes to sit next to Route 9. I always go inside, even though I like dining outside. It's just not next to a busy road. So that, I think, is going to be perfect.
Yeah, I think it's
You're
going to
going to
be
be
really
the
nice.
envy of all the restaurants in the village.
Yeah,
Because
once,
you'll have this protected space.
yeah, once we get a little better weather, I think it's going to be packed for sure. And really, that's the season in Rhinebeck starts on Mother's Day, so that's when everything changes.
So do we have an agreement on an amended site plan with 4 as I count 'em? 5?
As I count them, shed setback,
Yeah.
shielding of the area with the grease and all that stuff near the shed, correct width of the parking lot, shielding and showing of the HVC units and a shielding solution on the north side, and 1 additional tree between the sidewalk and the street to the right of the parking lot entry.
Okay, 5 things.
Yeah.
I might word as moving the previously approved tree to.
Move it, okay.
Right,
And working with the tree committee
And working with the
to
tree
come up
committee.
with the best species.
Okay.
so no net loss and working.
Because I'm not a big fan of crab apples, I'll tell you. If you walk under crab apples on the sidewalk, it's like,
Slippery.
I wish you hadn't approved it. I wish you said, I don't like crab apples.
yeah.
I'd been like, all right, no crab apple tree.
Well, it wasn't over the sidewalk the way this one will be.
And when you get the solution for the shed setback, you can provide an updated site plan?
Yes, of course. Yeah,
Yeah, the narrowing of the.
yeah, all of those
The
changes.
narrowing
will
of the
be
driveway. to-
documented.
Yeah,
Yeah.
list of 5.
Yeah,
or
yes,
that's-
yes, yeah, to the approved 24.
Is all that acceptable to everybody?
Yes.
Can I have a motion to approve it with the 5 conditions?
Don't make that motion.
I'll second Darren.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So I don't have to come back, I just have to fulfill the
Yeah, just submit a
conditions.
plan updated plan that
Documents
shows the
what's
5
been done.
changes.
Right.
And, you know, we'll trust you to do a good job on the screening.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have to get it done before I get a CO, so
Yeah.
Right. That's the,
it's not about
All right,
trusting
well, I'm
me.
glad you got a temporary CO so you didn't miss the
Yeah,
beginnings
that
of the
was very
season.
helpful.
Thank you, it looks great.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah, I'm really excited, for sure. And, you know, at this point, you know, after spending all the money that I have, I'm anxious to have the season start.
okay. If anybody has a use for a used Amtrak sign, I understand what it's going to be.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so, Ryan, could you forward me that list?
Yes, once we have a draft ready, Josh, you'll get the list.
I appreciate it. All right, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
All right, thank you for coming in.
Did we, the first item on the agenda was actually us voting to confirm David Miller as chairman for the year?
I didn't know if we wanted to vote on that without David here,
Oh, okay.
you know, because he may object.
You may object.
When I spoke with him,
That's a good
he
point.
said you guys can do whatever you want to do. If you want to make the vote tonight, you can take the vote tonight, or if you want to wait till May 16th, you can wait until May 16th.
There's no rush.
I think we ought to wait,
Yeah, well, let's wait till the next meeting.
just in case he has second thoughts, or at least it gives us the right, to give him an applaud when we.
In case he comes to
when we
his
vote for it.
senses.
Nobody else wants it, I assume. All right, next item on the agenda is a discussion of 41 Livingston Street, installation of EV charging station, or stations, I'm not sure.
Sorry, my first time here, so should I get up?
Yeah, why don't you can bring a chair up if you want.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You can sit on the table. You can put it-
No, I'm good, I'm happy to stand. I've been
Okay.
sitting all day. So, that's my wife Florine, so we moved into 41 Livingston last fall, as our kids have entered the school here. And we, as we've accommodated, or acclimated, I should say, to the house, we've learned that really the front of the house is the primary place we park our car. As some of you may be aware, there's access off of Mulberry Street to a separate garage that we have. It's not the primary way we enter the house, and typically we don't park there unless there's really inclement weather and we want to try and squeeze the car in the garage. We have decided, we have an old car at this point, it's a 2011, and put more money into that than I care to admit. And so it's time to get a new car. We have thought about an EV. We've decided to go with a plug-in hybrid as a temporary sort of holdover until the infrastructure is a little bit better in general for electric vehicles. So, in fact, we're leasing that car in part to not be committed to even the internal combustion side for too much longer until we really, I think, have a better infrastructure to rely on when we travel out of town. We do want the flexibility to be able to plug in the primary place where we park the car, which is the driveway in front of the house, while we're also going through the expense of having the electrician do all the work. And, we're working with DB Electric. We want to also install a unit in the garage itself. That's really the secondary unit, and I suspect at some point we have a teenager who is about to hit her 16th birthday.
Too bad.
For 4 days. So at some point, a second vehicle will be in the mix, and presumably at that point, because it won't be our get out of town car, that probably will be a full electric, and it'll just make sense to have the flexibility to charge that out at the garage. We'll make her park, go the extra 10 feet to walk. So our desire is to have these two installed. The way we do it in the front of the house, and we don't have all the drawings or anything. We did submit some pictures. I have some more that I took today and some measurements, if that's helpful. What we discussed with the electrician is that we would run conduit from basically I forget what it's called, the storm drain area in the front of the house, the closest area, out to underneath the sidewalk that leads to the back of our house, and run the cable, the power cable to the plug-in unit somewhere in front of the garage, in front of the driveway. We probably have some flexibility about where exactly to put that. There are limitations, by my understanding. I'm not an electrician nor an expert on any of this, but there are limitations on the length of the charge cable. Generally speaking, I think they go up to about 23 or 24 feet, and you can't really do extension cables without really, putting things at risk, because it's a lot of high current running through there, so it's not advisable. We measured from the corner of the house. If we could have put something on the corner of the house, would it extend far enough? And it wouldn't without needing some sort of extension cable. So we'd love to get the board's approval, obviously. We're open to recommendations about how best to do it. We have a fair amount of landscaping in front of the driveway, so we probably have some flexibility about where to put it to make it a little less visible from the street. And I think I submitted pictures of what the unit would look like. It would probably be mounted on either a stand, or we have a fence that runs not all the way out to the end of the driveway, but runs close to it. That is on our property, it is our fence, so presumably we could consider that too, and that's not terribly visible from the street, so.
These are the pictures?
These are some of the pictures I submitted, they were part of the link.
Yeah, and I have more too, that's helpful, I mean, I don't, yeah, I didn't know, I did this today, but did some measurements as well, if that's helpful to, I don't know who wants to, yeah. And this is without the measurements, but I could have printed out more.
And where on this are you proposing to put the outdoor?
Well, you know, ideally it would be somewhere around here, but so if this is the front of the driveway here, as you look out over here, this is a fence that basically terminates right here. Right? So presumably it would be possible, you see that that's about 10 feet from the edge of the driveway to that fence. That's a possibility.
That's on the east side.
That's on the east side. There's a tree here that blocks some of the view. I don't want to completely reduce the usability, particularly in the winter time, you know, so I want to be cognizant of that, but also respect that, you know, we're trying to maintain the appearance. So this is, you know, standing in the corner of the driveway, well, standing, if this is the front of the driveway, looking out at the fence. See what other useful views. Yeah, this is another way of looking at, so here's the driveway, you enter this way to the east side, this is that fence, but you know, somewhere along here would be ideal to install it if that was possible. And this is a, let's see if I have a view. And this may be helpful, just straight on from the driveway. The garage itself is, you know, I assume a somewhat simpler affair that's inside the garage. The unit looks, you know, like this, but it would have to be mounted on some, yeah, there you go.
It would be on some type of pole.
Yeah, I think, you know, they sell like a pole, but I mean, there's nothing magical about it other than it just needs to be on a post, you know, so we were thinking a wood post just because less metal, maybe better. Excuse me, but we're flexible on that front too.
I'll tell you how I feel about this. There is a prohibition in the residential district against front yard parking. And I remember when the garage was built, I was on the planning board at the time, the garage, and there's a two-story, there's an office above or something above it. So I remember it was an office, was approved. And you're one of the few places in the village that have rear access so that you don't have a need for a front yard driveway. And so I argued at the time that they should phase out that front yard parking. It'd been there before. You're putting it in your garage, you have rear access, there's no reason you can't park in the backyard. It would have been fewer curb cuts, the better, people backing out over sidewalks. So I argued at the time that this should be eliminated, this driveway. It was against the rules, against the code. And unfortunately, I don't remember how I was outvoted, but I must have been outvoted. I remember being against it. I think it was
I know
because
how you
one
were
of the other
outvoted,
planning
John.
board members lives in proximity and he has front yard parking. And he didn't want to make himself look bad or something. I
I
don't know.
think you were the only no vote.
Is that right? You
Everyone
remember?
else voted yes.
Better remember than me. At any rate, I don't want to complicate that by putting a precedent for a front yard charging station. Because these things are going to come up all over the place now. And if we allow you, because you have a front yard parking lot, to put a front, you know, then people are going to want to put front yard charging stations.
Yeah.
Because it's more convenient to where there are electric sources or whatever. In your case, you have a perfect place to put this where it's completely out of view. And it means you have to walk a little farther to get from your car to the back door instead of the front door, or whatever. So I would vote that we shouldn't break precedent with the code against front yard parking and front yard charging stations. as an accessory use to front yard parking. That's my feeling. The garage is a beautiful garage, nice building.
Yeah, so if and totally understand, and I was completely unaware of the front yard. I mean, I will say from a livability perspective, it is, look, it's obviously not impossible to get to the garage, but from a daily living perspective, particularly in the inclement weather like we had this past weekend, it is much more pleasant and convenient taking the kids to school, walking out the front door, which is our primary point of access, and being able to get in the car and go. I am open to the idea of concealing it in the front as best as possible so that people are generally unaware of its existence. I will say, I agree with you, more people are going to ask because it's the way of the future. The government has mandated, whatever percent by 2035, right? And that's the infrastructure that is required. In fact, the vast majority of charging happens not at public stations, but at home. It's the most efficient way to charge. And in fact, overnight is when, not that Central Hudson is a great example of a party to deal with, but at least you can manage the time of use charging because it has become quite expensive to charge. But if you park overnight, you charge overnight, and you set everything correctly, you can charge at the lowest rates when it's off-peak periods. So I agree with you. It is not impossible, obviously, for us to navigate. That garage is difficult to park in. That's one of the issues we've had as well. It is beautiful. We use the upstairs all the time. But the ingress and egress, particularly when the weather is not good, is difficult, and it's not wide. So that's the other reason why it's just much nicer to be able to park in front, and part of our desire to think about the future and the ecological impact of getting a new car is to do things that ultimately enable us to, hopefully with that, with a plug-in hybrid, if we can conveniently charge it on a regular basis, the car will get 40 miles of electric power, and we will rarely use gas for the vast majority of things that we would do.
I'm a plug-in hybrid, but if I was gonna set up a charging station, I'd do it in my garage, and I would pull up to the garage and pull the cord out. And I think that's
Where is
the
the
model we should look at if we have the opportunity to do it.
I'm sorry, John, where's the garage? Is it over here?
Garage is in the backyard.
Behind
It's-
all those
Behind all
trees.
those-
Yeah,
With entrance from what street?
There's an alley coming over
Mulberry.
to Mulberry
Yeah.
that they own all the way out to the alley.
we
It's
own most of
very
it. Yeah,
unusual.
we own most of it. There's a portion of it that is,
As a right of use.
yeah, well, that's right. But there's also a portion of it that's,
No, we own
For the
it,
neighbor.
we just have we own it, but we have a right of use.
Easements on it.
Yeah.
An easement.
yeah.
It's
Jeff,
very,
I
I mean, it's the only one I can think of in the village.
Yeah, it is.
So,
Because
Jeff,
the
I
other
just sent
reason
you
is
parcel
their
access
neighbor
Check your email, I
to
just sent you the parcel
the
access
east
map. It does a good job.
has no parking in the front.
Yeah.
That's
They
right.
park
That's
behind
right.
their house, and that's how they access.
yeah, the neighbor to the east,
Yeah,
Correct.
to the east,
That's right.
they have rear parking.
correct.
Everybody on that corner could actually have rear parking. I remember when the corner lot on Mulberry came in, and they
Yes,
wanted a side yard driveway.
Marty Rosenblum
Right,
parks.
and I argued you should come off the alley, because I'm sure they have rights.
They have a parking spot, I think, on Mulberry.
Exactly,
They have no parking.
but that's behind the house, we couldn't,
Right.
on a corner lot, you designate one as the frontage and one as the side yard, and they come off the side yard. But I just think this is, I don't want to set the precedent of having a charging station in the front yard and a parking lot in the front yard.
How far from where that car is parked to the front facade of the house?
I will tell you, so from the front of the driveway, you mean if you took the facade directly over, or you mean actually to the corner?
In other words, why I'm asking this question is there a scenario where, and I agree with you, John, there's just going to be more of this.
Right.
But if
You've got it behind the front
if you
point
could,
of the
if you
house.
could put this thing behind the front plane of the house over here,
Yeah,
right?
So
we
you
would
extended the driveway.
either extend the driveway or make sure that the length of your thing will
yeah,
be satisfied. And because I'm sure we're gonna get more of these. I mean, I have a plug-in electric too,
Yeah,
you know, you're gonna plug it, it's just,
So Jeff, what might be a better picture, this is a dated picture.
Yeah.
Because there's a fence
Right.
behind the light
Yeah.
post.
this fence,
Correct, yes.
That's it, that's a picture I believe from 2020.
okay.
Yeah, this
And
was,
is the fence,
so the
back-
from the front of the driveway to the fence is 27 feet. So it couldn't
What about the
be,
front of the driveway to the plane of the house?
the front of the driveway to the plane of the house is, hold on, 51?
No.
No, that's, driveway placement to front,
yeah,
I should be able to figure this out from the
that's
numbers I
33,
have.
and I see your point, that's 33 and this is 51. That's 17 feet,
Yeah,
right?
it's, that,
Assuming that the door.
I think we measured that did we not measure that in our submission? I'm trying to remember. It's one.
looks like the fence is set back from the front plane of the house.
Well, so driveway to, what's that driveway?
The only
Well, this is
measurement
my
I-
point, I'm not suggesting it would have to be behind the
It's
fence.
probably something like
I'm
that.
suggesting-
yeah.
Trying to measure it online, it looks like about 12 feet
Yeah,
from
that-
driveway
That would make
to front of
sense,
house.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeff, I sent you the parcel access, if it's helpful to pull up this plan view of all this. You can open your email.
Because, I mean, that's possible, right? I mean, look, it's not super, yeah.
So the driveway ends here.
Yeah.
It's about 12
Plane of the
feet.
house, and the fence is, looks like.
The fence is no further back. The fence, from the driveway to the fence is, what did I say, 26 feet, 27 feet.
It's about 12 feet to the plane of the house, I think.
Sorry, say again, how far to the?
He said 27 feet from the driveway to the fence.
Yeah,
From here to the fence.
correct.
Yeah, this little smudge there, you think
That's
that might be the
I think the
fence?
fence, that's
But
it.
no, the fence isn't on this picture because the fence got installed
Okay,
about a year ago.
but the fence is set back from the
The
front of
fence is
house?
set back from the plane of the house, that's correct.
About how much?
From front of the house to main fence is 9.6 feet, so there's the answer.
Yeah.
I knew I had that measurement, so the driveway minus, so 27 feet minus 10, so 17, 16 feet. 27 minus, yeah, 17 and a half feet from the front of the house back to the fence. Excuse me, from the driveway to the front of the house.
And 10 feet from the front of the house to the fence.
Correct, 9.6.
Yeah, we talk a lot about things, fences, for example, not being equal to or forward of the front of the house. I'm not suggesting that if there's an option for this solution, that it would have to be behind the fence. I'm suggesting it would have to be behind the front plane of the house. And in this case, you've got a lot of shrubbery there and all that, if you could make that work. That's it. There are a lot of houses in the village, a couple of houses just next to me where they get one car in the driveway next to the house. And there must be 10 feet between the house and the property line. And they don't have a garage and they can't pull back further either. But if they had, again, a station that was behind the front plane of the house, it could reach a car that was in that short a driveway and the car would still be off the street, off the...
I'd certainly be open to, look, from a convenience perspective, it's obviously a step back. Part of the reason why we wish to not strictly rely on the garage in addition to the complexities I mentioned is we do expect we will need a second car, and we do expect that car likely will be electric, and that garage in no way, shape, or form can accommodate two cars, notwithstanding what the sellers told us when we first looked at the house. Some bikes, yes, a car barely, and bikes. So that's the other reason why it is important to be able to have both to the extent that that's possible. If the answer is it needs to be behind the plane of the house, while not ideal, that still provides us the flexibility. There is a fair amount, as you can see in the pictures, there's trees right up to the front of the driveway. I has worked with our, I mean, you can see it well on this one. Florine, I know you've worked extensively with our landscapers around these issues too. So, you know, that we could make work. And the car that we're thinking of has a charge port toward the front of the car. So, you know, as long as we park inward, you know, that should stretch. That should stretch. We'll have to go through the trees to get the cable and whatever,
I
but
get that, that's another consideration, because
Yeah.
I'm looking at electric now, and that's a key consideration, is the port in the front or the
yeah,
rear.
yeah. No, if it was, I mean, if we were able to do it right at the front of the driveway, we'd obviously have all the flexibility for whatever car we would have in the future or whatever, but I hear the
Goes back
concerns
to the
associated with that.
Sure.
You can always back in the driveway too, if you have a rear port.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still would opt to have it in the back, because I think we're just tempting fate. That everybody's gonna, once we make a decision like that, everybody's gonna wanna hang it on the front of the house.
Could we talk about the back for a minute? Just the logistics of the alley back there
Yeah.
and the garage. So I haven't been back there personally, but it looks like there's just a single width driveway that runs right
Yes,
at a
correct.
single width garage door back there.
Correct, and
So
so,
in theory, somebody could pull in the garage and charge, and somebody could pull up to the front of the garage and charge.
It's just
Right.
that
Two
the
stations
garage,
within.
you're actually
One outside,
entering the
one
garage
inside.
is flush with the fence, so there's, you know, there is a very, it's very difficult to park a car in the garage and in the lot, because you can't exit the garage without going straight out of the garage, because there's no, I mean, you would have to move the car out of the back in order to, if you had two cars back there, in order to exit the garage. I mean, there's just, it's very difficult to.
it's a difficult garage to navigate. It is not, I mean, we have with our 13-year-old car, I would argue, you know, an inch on either side to pull in, right? And it's, so we do use it when, I mean, battery doesn't hold much of a charge, so in the cold days, I got it in there, you know, and hooked up a battery conditioner for those purposes. But, you know, from a convenience perspective, well, part of it is, and the reason why we want to do both at the same time is because we are looking at this life change and kid having presumably access to a car here, and that we want, you know, we figured we should do it all in one fell swoop to the extent that we can do it. I mean, I recognize we would be breaking with precedent, or you would be breaking with precedent on the one hand, on the other hand, you know, the future is coming upon us around these things too. So I'd love to be able to find a way to accommodate that without creating an eyesore, which I think we can do by just putting it a little bit further back, and we'll take the, you know, we'll just deal with in the wintertime, the inconvenience of, you know, having to navigate through the shrubbery to get the charger.
What's to the west of the garage there? Is there room to potentially park up next to it?
It's our backyard. No, it's a fence that runs,
Yeah, we could
basically a
park
fence.
against the fence too.
So
That-
there's another fence there,
Yeah,
so
exactly, yes,
Yeah.
that-
And
that's,
it's right up against the garage.
yeah.
Yeah,
right
The
there,
garage looks good. I mean, the garage door isn't as wide as the building.
right.
So the building looks wide enough to park a car.
We were surprised.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do it, it's
You can
just,
do it.
it's just not, it's not, you've had me do it more, more frequently.
I've
It's,
done it before too.
yes, I know, It's,
But is it not, you know, an option to shift the fence over? I mean, if we
Oh,
allow you to alter the back of the yard a little bit to get a car next to the garage, and the garage having a charger in it, you
Well,
could have two charge points, and then we could potentially lose the driveway in the front.
so we have, you see that rectangle of like patio space there, right? Immediately next to the garage. The egress point to the driveway is right past that patio, right at the north end of the garage itself.
Okay?
so you're saying bring it all in?
Right, yeah, at the end of essentially your patio, is just exploring whether that's a spot where a second car could be.
Yeah.
And there could be a charge port, say, on the outside and inside of the garage wall in that situation, maybe. It might also
Well,
just help you convenience-wise.
I don't think we'll be able to do that because there's a sub panel into the garage. The sub panel has a maximum of 100 amps. The main house has 200 amps. Again, I'm not an electrician, but I know that that's the maximum you can have in both, right? I think if you would try and put two modern chargers off the 100 sub panel, the 100 amp sub panel, I'm not sure that's a reasonable idea from an electrical perspective. So really what you're talking about is the garage, by my understanding, can accommodate a car. And the option we've looked at in these, the reason why we've selected these particular ones is because they speak to each other. And they don't provide full power to both at the same time, which can overload. So one car gets charged, the other car is on wait for the first car to either move to a trickle charge or otherwise be done so that you aren't overloading the circuits. So I think that would be, we could talk to the electrician, but I think that would be a complicated solution just given the fact that that's not the source of our, the garage is already pulling off the house.
Unless you could pull a new circuit out of the house to serve both chargers and then free up maybe the 100 in the garage or something like that.
Yeah.
You still have the same backbone electric to run to a pedestal in the front or the back.
Yeah.
The underground distance may be a little longer, admittedly.
Yeah.
But they're probably 40 watts of charger, I would assume.
48. Yeah, 48 amps.
So
Yeah.
a third of your total power right there.
I know. It's, yeah. I mean, look, it's a plug-in hybrid for now too, so it's not going to be pulling the full power, but if we're going to do it, it just makes sense to, be prepared for what will eventually be
Yeah,
a
of
full
course.
electric.
Yeah, for sure.
So what direction do we want to point these people? There seems to be two options. Provide two chain chargers back in the, behind the garage, and they can figure out the logistics of how they situate the cars. Or the second option is not to put it on a pole by the driveway, but to put it behind the front plane of the house so we don't break precedent in terms of the front yard
That's
charging
right, yeah.
station.
I'm in favor of number 2 because I think it will be good for us to encourage non-carbon footprint vehicles.
Right?
And I think there's just going to be more of it. And one of the bigger problems we face now is the explosion of mini split HVAC units. This thing would be hardly noticeable, if you could put it on the house there, in other words, it's not going to approximate having a mini split hanging off the side of the house.
I think it's just another modern accessory use that doesn't
Well,
fit in the historic district.
then, John, maybe what we could do is what we're doing with the mini split, say, shield it, put
Well-
a little juniper in front of it.
Yeah. Well, like I said, they have lots of landscaping. If they put it
Yeah.
on or about that fence
Yes,
that comes off the house,
yeah,
it would be relatively screened.
yes.
And if they have to extend the driveway a couple feet to be matched cord length or whatever, they could also do that. But I don't want to see front yard charging stations.
Nor do I. And
And we would only, the precedent would be, we'd only accept a situation like this when there's an existing front yard driveway as this one has.
I agree.
Yeah. So then anybody else who has a driveway that runs beyond the front plane of the house would have to put the charger as far back on the house as possible
Yes,
to where the car can sit, not in the front yard.
yes. And I can think of a number of houses like that in the
Yeah.
village.
They have a single car driveway
Yep, that's right.
that extends to the back, and they park in the front, but they
Yeah.
could park to the side of the house or
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
And we want to encourage it as far back so that the car is parked behind the front plane of the house when it's charging.
Yeah,
And this would be an exception because you have an existing driveway that's set up like that. Is that,
Yeah, I mean, now having explored the options, I think I'm also in favor of the front yard scenario. I wouldn't be opposed to the rear yard scenario if you could solve to that, and just encourage you to talk to your electrician about it for a few minutes, and just see sometimes, problems solve themselves.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, that does help,
Yeah.
because we don't have to upgrade X or Y to do it. But I'm agreeing with what I'm hearing. I think setting the charger back behind the front plane of the building is important. I'd almost argue that maybe something like half a car length is sort of a number that we can use as a magic threshold, like 10 feet or something like that, so that we're at least assured the car is pulled.
Yeah, well,
10 feet in,
I would suggest 20 feet back from the front plane of the house, wherever it's possible.
Wherever it's
To pull the
possible.
car back that far.
Right. That's
So
a
you
good
don't
point.
have the car charging in the front yard.
Yeah.
But in this case, you can't do that.
Can't do it, yeah.
Unless you change your driveway.
Right, yeah, which, I mean, look, I'm happy to move it behind the plane as far as we can. I do have to give accommodation to the fact that the charger is not the front of the
Right.
charge port is not the front of the car. It's probably 3 or 4 feet back on the car. And again, from an electrical safety perspective, I think there's just limitations on how long those cables can be and the lack of ability to extend them. So really, all your flexibility is around the cabling that's laid by the electrician up to the charger. There, you're then stuck with the limitations. This one is, I think, 23.7 feet. The ones I found were, it says 25 feet, so that's as far as they'll go. Right, so I'm not even getting the full length.
Yeah, let's continue the thought. I mean, pulling it back as far as you folks can.
Yeah.
Because it's not the precedent from the past, it's what we're setting for the future, right? So for us to
Totally
talk to the
understand.
next applicant and say, well, these applicants pulled it back as far as they possibly
Yeah.
could,
Yeah.
which we felt was reasonable because it was in excess of half of a car length. And then from there, I'm a little less concerned maybe than others about the way the charge port looks itself, because they're relatively small, and I'd almost encourage it to be freestanding rather than on the house, because I think you could tuck it into
Yeah.
a shrub, and the only thing you really need to get off of it is the cord, right?
Yeah.
We have a black cord.
Correct.
The other thing about them is, depending on the brand, they have fancy flashing lights, and I would encourage you to shine that at your own house
Yeah,
and choose a
that's fine.
model that you can live with little red lights flashing at you, and just even cant it slightly away from the road, so the visual, the nighttime impact is yours and not your neighbor's or a pedestrian walking by.
That makes sense.
And in those cases, I think it's a relatively benign thing that just comes out of the ground on, say, a 4x4 post.
Yeah.
I'd encourage you to paint it green or black, just something matte, so that post goes away, and then we're left with a black cord and, name your brand, a black or a white or a blue charge port.
Yeah.
Which sits, about yay high off the ground. And then, your point is good, that it's a DC cord, so, every foot you go, you lose, amperage, so we're going to be limited, people are going to be limited by the length of the cord no matter what.
Yeah.
So it does in a way pull our cars, achieve this objective of pulling the cars off the roadway. So I can support the first option too.
Yeah, last week I took a trip to North Carolina with some friends, and part of the trip was to see what it was like to travel in a Tesla for almost 400 miles.
How did it go?
Well, it went well. We had to stop for charging more than we thought.
Yeah.
Because, it seems obvious, like if the car's gonna get 280 miles of charge, that means you can go 280 miles, but you really can't.
Yeah. And
Because the
cold.
thing is telling you, this is the next charging station, and if you continue driving at this current rate, we went down to 1% charge at one point to
That's
get to the
courageous.
next Tesla charging station. And it was surprisingly affected by hills and wind.
Yeah.
And then when we got there, we were at a ski house up a steep hill, and he recharged it with a long extension cord.
Yeah.
It was a pretty thick, gauge.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, he recharged it with that.
Yeah, that we just realized however much I would like to, for all the ecological reasons, or we would like to be in full electric mode, and we've rented Teslas occasionally. I rented a non-Tesla, and if you don't have access to that supercharger network, you're effectively on your own. It's luck of the draw when you get to any other charger. And so for now, this is our first new car ever. We just decided we'll go hybrid for now, plug-in hybrid, use electric for as much as we can, and then hopefully in a few years' time, the infrastructure will be there. But
So what do we need to,
So, because they're here for discussion,
Mhm.
they are informally here, they wanted to get the input and feedback from you guys from what this concept is, so they need to basically go back home and digest the impact from the input, not impact, the input from the board, and then they need to fill out a site plan application, and they need to provide probably new photos where this can be superimposed in different spots in front of the driveway and the car. Maybe you want to try to superimpose one somewhere in the area where you have your existing lamppost. So maybe it could blend in with the lamppost that's there.
the lamppost is in front of the plane of the house, right?
Yeah, I would put
Yeah.
it farther away,
Yeah.
so it's
Or
more
if you
hidden by
can
the landscaping if
Put
possible.
it back in the other part of the garden that's on the other side of the sidewalk, behind the lamppost.
Mhm.
Superimpose an image on there. And then just come back, get this in the next week. The next meeting is May 16th.
Okay. So I email to you, Ryan,
Yes.
those pictures?
Yep.
We'll have to work
I
on
would
that.
find a spot that is as inconspicuous as possible, as far back as possible.
Don't worry, our interests are aligned.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think once you move off the front of the driveway, it pretty quickly gets thick with vegetation. Do you want me to take those back? Do you want to keep them?
I want to keep the ones that have the measurements.
You can
You can take this one back, and
Okay.
this one back, we have those. These three.
Okay.
We'll keep these.
Okay, all right. Appreciate it.
generally speaking, for future discussion of anybody else who comes in, the principles that we would like to see is if it's in the garage, it doesn't need a site plan, right?
Agreed.
If it's outside the garage in the historic district, it needs a site plan. And,
So for inside the garage, you want
no,
right, yeah. no.
inside the garage, no site plan.
I'm
If it's
sorry.
outside the garage on a post or visible from the
Yes,
street, it
well,
should have a site
that's-
plan amendment, just like
that's
the
why-
heating units.
Jeff stopped by the office and he
Yeah.
said, we're thinking
Yeah.
about this, what do we do? And
I know
said,
10
well,
people would just put it up and then say, oh, I didn't know.
the one in the garage, is all right, but this one you want in the front yard, you're gonna have to talk to
Well,
these.
we don't want it in the
these
front yard,
folks.
that's the point.
Sorry.
So,
So the principle would be, the preference would be at least 20 feet behind the front plane of the house, so when the car is charging, it's not in the front yard. In exceptional cases like this, as far back as possible, certainly behind the front plane of the house, and shielded as best possible by landscaping. So that's the sort of principles we're looking for.
Okay, well, that's good counsel, we appreciate it, thank you for the open discussion.
Yeah, well, thanks
We'll
for
do our
coming in.
homework, And nice to meet you all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Glad you made it with your 1%.
Your 1% Tesla charge.
I think we got down to 15% one time when we were driving, and that was, she lives in Holland where the infrastructure is deep and wide, so not the same level of range anxiety issues that we face here. Okay,
Well, there you go. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
All right, we have minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so,
You want to start with January 3rd?
I guess so, yes. I mean,
You have these up
Yeah.
with the amendments on them? Has everybody looked at the red mark versions?
What is this? Oh, this is the-
Just before we get to January 3rd, so just to acknowledge, we still haven't seen November 1st and December 6th. Is that correct? Those are still the two are outstanding? Okay.
But this is
Actually,
big
let's-
progress.
This is, oh yeah,
Yes,
this is big
let's-
progress. I just wanted to not skip over the end of last year.
This is Darren's evaluation email. So
Right,
November,
there you go.
November 1st, December 6th missing, February 21st missing?
That
That's the one we just got?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is prior to last
Okay.
meeting.
This is a little dated.
Oh, okay.
I'll tell you what, Jeff, I will email you the new one.
Okay. Let's see, so for the December 3rd, Darren had red lined and then I had blue lined. And existing sign.
None of them changed since you circulated them, right? These are what we've seen?
It should be, let's see, why does this look funny here?
I'm glad everybody takes better notes than me.
No higher than 20 feet. Okay, yes, yeah, this is, so, all right, January 3rd.
Can we do these all in one vote?
I
Could.
only had one.
The one that you sent today, I had already started working on a version of that, so I copied
Okay.
my notes and pasted it into your red line version, which no one else has seen yet.
Okay.
We could look at that, and if everyone's okay with it. I just want it to be real clear, because that's the one that had the apartments.
Yeah,
Your drainage system, with a lot of stuff there.
that's
Well,
February 21st, I think, right?
Yeah, that's further
All
down.
right, well, why don't we just run through these then? This is the
All right.
first, this is January 3rd, condition
No,
of
we'll just
sign.
vote on each one separately.
Okay. And this red stuff is yours, Darren?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And John Clark noticed since there is an accessory dwelling unit, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I think we've seen
Number of
all these.
alternative sections were discussed. Clark drew attention to a concern Gateway District by the Cove Building. Everyone see that?
So
We're good with that?
So I make a motion to approve the January 3rd, 2023
Okay.
minutes as amended, as marked up.
I'll second.
January
Darren.
17th. Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Second by Darren, aye. Everybody okay?
Here's, come on, stop.
So that was January 3rd, good to go.
And January 17th.
January 17th. Okay, so I put your additional note in here, John, about the handrail extensions as a
Oh,
suggestion.
yeah, that was good.
Okay, originally proposed in 2020, discussion about, okay, this is Christian patching, okay. Landscaping, lighting, access to the bus stop, which will remain, parking spaces, dumpster facility, protection of the exterior from getting hit, blah, blah, blah. Asked if they'd consider making an apartment affordable, she said, oh, I'll ask. And that was that. John Clark, the apron between the, you know, it's just.
Now, we've seen all these.
Oh, yeah, okay, so we're good with all this?
Yeah.
I've seen it all.
Okay,
Yep.
that's the 17th.
Motion,
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
As amended?
yes,
as amended,
that's as
yeah.
amended.
Now, here's February 7th. Again, this is the, I guess the red lines again are yours, Darren.
Yep.
Commercial business tenant.
Like your
Below
blue,
Biker,
John's green.
wiring repairs on the thing
Yeah.
that needed to be changed, color, temperature. This is Brian, oh, this was, this was the fence. John explained the fence.
Oh, you really wanted to go town on this one.
Yeah, and a large gap is, because his.
Oh, yeah, we've read this. He
Okay.
blamed his wife.
Blah, 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 and it was John Clark.
That's why he didn't get the variance, right?
That's, I left out the part where it said his wife would give us the finger, do you remember that part? So that's that. And then here's, Evan Conklin, oh, this is the pistachio thing. Originally, they had a deck with a slide and a party deck and stairs and all, and they took that out regarding the footprint, and then that got confirmed at the next meeting. Also, they're gonna clarify septic, et cetera, which they actually did.
There's one thing due to the property being in the historic overlay district, acting chairman John Clark felt a public hearing would be necessary. There was a second reason that I thought a public hearing was necessary, and that was when Marla Walker was in for her pool. We had sort of set a precedent and it said, going forward, all pools will require a public hearing. So I didn't know if and this came up in this meeting, it might be worth stating that there was a second reason why.
I'd just say, generally speaking, the board prefers public hearings when pools are involved because of potential noise and other impacts.
Okay.
I think it's good to have that in the minutes, so we can in the future. I missed it the first time around.
So we're going to say, and so we're making a note that in the future when we do a public hearing, we want to do that anytime a pool is included in a site plan.
Correct. Due to potential adverse impacts. Something like that. if you want.
So, we okay for a motion on February 7th with that additional amendment?
And that's it, and that's it. Recommended the meeting, up to date minutes is amended. Clark noted the village reviewing recommendations to expand the footprint, blah, blah, blah. There will be public hearings.
Yep.
Which request the
We've
town of
seen this.
Rhinebeck to be an
Yep.
interested party, blah, 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 we adjourn. Okay?
I'll make the motion to approve February 7th.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The 21st, I believe, is one that needs some more work.
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to skip that or talk about that now.
What I
So
could,
John has input,
yeah,
you
John,
have
this,
input on that?
this is, so what I did here, I can circulate this, and we could do it at the next meeting, I suppose, because no one else has seen this, but you've seen the ones John put in there. The ones in blue are the one I added to what John put in there. This thing in yellow, I didn't quite understand. Hadji presented the proposed kind of water runoff, but basically I replaced that with pretty much all of this, right? Noting that there'll be additional infiltrator unit capacity has been added to design that was proposed in a prior review. John said minutes should see if there's a public hearing. Michael said about the telephone. Darren mentioned about being responsible for ongoing maintenance, continuous operation. John asked for public comments, there were none.
Okay, so you can take out that bracketed thing.
Okay. Then Chairman Miller to close the public hearing, we closed it. Now this, again, these two I'm not so sure about. It said, made a motion to declare secra. What I remember was this part. And I went through the video, and it was kind of sketchy and hard to hear what Victoria was saying, but she requested the board reaffirm the secret declaration that was already adopted, noting that basically this is a lot less than you approved before.
That sounds right.
And I said David Miller made the motion because he said, yeah, I motioned what she said, he said. So that's why I wrote that.
Okay.
This last one.
Except
here-
David Miller, if I'm acting chairman, then that means David Miller wasn't there.
He was.
Okay, then.
He was there, but I don't think he was well enough to conduct the meeting.
Oh, okay.
We had asked
I
him to
remember that.
conduct the meeting.
Yeah, I remember him saying something to the effect he hadn't been
Right.
there for the prior discussion, so he was going to sit back and.
All right, so he was there.
That's the part I remember what Victoria said. David said, yeah, what she said, and made that motion. I seconded, everyone said yes. But then what is this thing here? Acting chairman to declare negative declaration. I don't remember, and I didn't hear that in the video.
Well, that's, what we did was we reaffirmed the previous negative
Okay, all
declaration.
right, so that's what that's about.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
so
just
this-
substitute what's in blue for what's in
Okay,
yellow.
okay. And then at the end, after discussion, Darren approved change of use.
Okay.
Is that the same as basically what we approved up here? Because there were a number of conditions. Motion to approve the site plan, condition to be updated, note details. Remember, there was a tie and bond concerns letter, and the tie and bond had a response letter of all the concerns. And you said, as long as they deal with them and the agreement noted by the applicant in the meeting, such as regular schedule of drainage system inspection, and all remaining engineering comments are satisfied before a building permit is issued, was your statement, John. Is that basically that, or is this thing here about the change of use a different motion?
I suggested the motion with the conditions,
Yes,
and Darren must have
I feel like Ryan prompted a second vote on that one.
Yeah, we talked about it a lot, and it said, do we
Right,
have a
approve
motion?
the site plan and then
Yeah.
approve that we've approved the change of use. So we did it as two separates, if I remember
Okay,
correctly.
so then that last thing,
So that should be probably moved down to here.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
but yeah, it's like rapid fire one and the other.
Because you have to do the seeker before you do the motion to
Okay,
approve.
so, suggestion there in motion.
I think it happened the way it's written here, because it was Victoria that was like, and shouldn't we?
Yeah, exactly,
So you're saying, move this down to here?
yeah.
Procedurally, right.
So substitute that for this one,
Substitute this for this one?
yeah.
Okay, and then, yeah, okay, just
Then
do that.
it'll flow,
I got
right?
it, I got it, I got it. Yeah.
Because I just suggested the motion and Darren actually made the motion.
Okay, anything else? Let's see. New business. Oh, this is the stickle thing.
Before we get to back to the Polidoro one though, wasn't this the meeting, I think this is the one where I showed up about 5 or 10 minutes late and Warren came in without plans and just spoke for a moment about, he hadn't had a chance to amortize some of the changes from the prior meeting into his architectural plans. And I caught the tail end of that where he was explaining that they were going to do certain things to promote the historic character and incorporate some of the suggestions, which I thought was a really important part to have
Okay,
in
well,
the minutes for this one.
This was the public hearing,
Right,
and
the one I was late for.
so for example, let me see if I remember this correctly, the site plan that Chris Haji spoke to, he said that they increased the number of infiltrator units on the lower catch basin,
Right.
and I think that was shown in the site plan, so that
The
was.
Pagy plan was up to date, but the
Okay.
Warren plan wasn't.
Okay.
The architectural for the building.
Okay,
And
so,
I believe Warren sort of just affirmed that they had heard what we said and they were going to incorporate certain elements, but he hadn't had yet a chance to pull it into the
Yeah.
plan. And I didn't have the benefit of the video on this, so I'm happy to go take a look. That's why I thought it
okay,
needed more.
well, why don't you do that, we can approve this at the next one.
Yeah,
Because I remember one of the things was, I pointed out that some of the windows were smaller than the prior ones. And
Those
the
types
answer
of
was,
things.
that's because when they converted from hotel to apartments, those were the kitchen areas of the apartments, so there were smaller windows above, like the kitchen sink or something. So,
Is that
something had changed.
Can I get that video off?
so why don't you
online still?
circulate this to Darren and
Still need-
everybody
Oh,
else?
I
up
thought
there?
we weren't allowed to put them there anymore. So I will take a look at that, because those were some important.
All right, so let's skip over that one.
Yeah.
All right.
You'll just
And that's-
circulate it again.
Yeah, the site plan stuff's all good, but it was
All right.
the building stuff I wanted to make sure we caught.
So
All
now
right.
we're to March 7th.
We had, do we want to talk about Stickles and, oh, we're just going to skip this whole.
Well, since we're gonna do it next time, we could, I mean, when you look at it, we could
Okay.
talk next time. Or Stickles, well, let's look at Stickles, okay. Building, you pointed out, John, there was this thing about the historic registry. Seth Stickles talked a lot about how long the family was here and all that stuff.
Right.
And it wasn't historic. He pointed out about the distinction of the national and state historic district, and it was within that footprint. Darren, you talked about village code. This is something John put in here in the red. This is the part of the village code that was read out and discussed, right?
The second criteria.
Septic system, and Seth noted they're actually putting a new system in to replace the existing seepage pit with a compliance system. But that's out to the Board of Health. You elaborated on fellow members, 34 feet, discussion about the roof design, is there dormers or aren't there dormers, should the roof slope to the front or the side, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's what this proposed gables thing was.
Yeah.
Right? And I just said at this point, basically, there was a lot of suggestions. There's no approval would be conditioned on acceptance of a plan that's deemed consistent, because we talked about, is there a way that we could, if it came to it, approve a certificate of demolition, not knowing what was going there, which is our concern. And we said that it could be conditioned upon the acceptance of a plan that's deemed consistent with this.
And I think John also hit it with the making the house compatible with its neighbors in terms of scale,
Yes,
orientation for
yeah.
the veterans, so.
But if you look at this for further stuff before the next meeting, we can add it to here. Then there was just Huck Hill, which was pretty simple.
Yeah.
We went right through that. Board members, the meeting schedule got changed. Chairman John Clark, attention to the Rhinebeck Department. Oh, yeah, and this is where we asked for additional research on the files. This is when we had a executive session that Justin came and told us some things, and then we adjourned.
Okay,
So I can, yeah, I know what to do with here to here, replacing that, and I can do that, send that out, and then
I'll
if you-
work from that.
If you look from that, or anyone,
right, we'll do it
and
next
we
time.
can do it at the next meeting. But that's the only ones I went through, so I'm really not ready to talk about anything since then, but I'll work more,
Okay, so we're going to delay on March 7th, April 4th, and April
Yeah.
18th.
yeah,
Okay.
But there's drafts out there floating around
yeah.
that people could work off of. I looked at them and I was okay with all of them as amended. Just so everybody knows, I don't know if you've seen the village board made decisions on the historic district, that they're going to go to a 1945 cutoff date, so all those buildings on Platt in the upper end of Millbury and Parsonage won't be under the local historic district, but they will be under the National Register District, and they had voted to keep the map the same, so we're gonna have a map that shows the contributing buildings and a lot of non-contributing buildings up in that corner.
You said at that meeting that one of the maps they showed was actually the wrong one.
Yes, they
Right.
keep showing that
So-
simplified map rather than the parcel map.
So is the map that is the footprint map they agreed to the one from that gigantic Larson study?
Yes. So the Larson map is gonna stay, but they're gonna note, I suggested just a crosshatch pattern or some other pattern to show the non-contributing buildings within the whole
Yes.
historic district.
Yes,
And so that whole stretch up on Platt is gonna be non-contributing. So it's not gonna be contributing to the historic district, but so in effect, we won't have, the planning board will not have demolition control over those non-contributing buildings, the 45 to
Yes.
70.
yes,
But we will have control over what goes back in.
right.
So it's sort of reversing. Right now, we have control over demolition, but not site plan. Now we're gonna have site plan, not demolition. This house, the Stickles house, is actually pre-1945.
1940.
Yeah, so we're gonna have control over demolition and site plan,
Uh-huh.
which gives us more ammunition to say, we're not gonna approve demolition unless you give us something pretty damn
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Not that junk you put up there
And
before.
just curiosity, that dirt lot on Mulberry, is that in the footprint now?
It will be.
Okay,
When are
It's
they
in the-
gonna vote on that?
What's that? I don't know when they're gonna vote, but they made the decision at a workshop, so I presume
Need a
they're gonna
public
try to.
hearing?
They'll need a public hearing and then a vote, so
Right.
probably another month,
Yeah, they
So
said end
Stickles
of
doesn't
May,
come-
early June is what they said at that workshop.
Okay.
yeah.
because until that happens, we don't have jurisdiction on the site plan for that empty lot.
Yeah. Or for Stickles,
Right.
which I think is more of a concern.
Yeah,
I think the
yeah.
empty lot's gonna be an empty lot for quite a while.
Okay. Yeah,
Well, Stickles, we have demolition jurisdiction still, though.
Yes, and that'll take a month or so, because we have to have a public hearing.
Right.
So that, by then, I think we'll have control over site plan.
They'll get hit both. They'll get hit on the demo, and then 3 months later, they'll get hit on what goes back.
Yes, but if
If we.
Yeah, if that vote goes through the way it is, but the mayor announced it is, so they're all wired to do it.
thanks for all your work on that, John. I know you did a lot of work in advising
Yeah,
that was meaningful to them, and it wouldn't have been as good as it is without your input, so.
yeah, I didn't agree on the map.
Yeah, I
It
know.
seems crazy to put a map together that has all these non-contributing
Uh-huh.
buildings together. But they wanted control over demolition on Platt Street, I think is what it came down to. They're afraid those big lots up there, they're not afraid of the little houses being demolished, but they're afraid of what's gonna go in
On the
afterwards.
big lots, right?
And so, that's the reason I think they wanted to really push for having that in the historic district. Because then somebody wouldn't be able to knock down a little house and put up a McMansion type ugly eyesore sort of house. All right, next on the agenda, summer meeting schedule.
July 4th, really?
These are all the possible dates, right? And we have to choose how many we want?
As scheduled today, right?
Right.
Yeah, because that's every first and third.
Yeah, usually we don't have 2 meetings in July and August.
Correct. So this
But we
is
usually
as-
have it in June, don't we?
Correct. We've usually in the past have had 2 meetings in June, and then 1 meeting in July and 1 meeting in August. And then we're back. So this is the schedule as it goes by the first and third Tuesday of every month.
Right.
These,
I'm good for June 6th and June 20th, but I don't like July 4th.
June 20th is the one that I cannot make, so if anyone else can't make that, that would be a good one not to have quorum issues.
What was that?
June 20th is the only one that I cannot make of any of these,
Yeah.
and July 4th would be less desirable.
So we want to do July 18th rather than July 4th?
Yeah, just the one meeting in July?
Yeah, usually we
Yes.
only have 1 meeting in
Yes.
July. So let's cancel the July 4th because a lot of people do 4-day weekends.
Right.
What about June? Do we want to have 2 meetings or 1? Typically, we do 2.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing July 4th, then you wouldn't want to cancel June 20th, so that would be a big gap between.
Yeah, so maybe we want to stick with June 20th. Let's
Yeah.
just see if we can have a quorum.
Yep,
Okay.
sorry about that.
And August, everybody's thinking that far ahead.
Usually you guys try to not have the meeting when it's close to fair time, so that
Yeah, but
would be
because the way the
August
Tuesday.
15th.
Yeah, it's 15th. The fair isn't until the 21st, right?
So it starts runs the 22nd to the 27th.
Right. So the 15th wouldn't be a problem.
More interesting is September 5th, what's Labor Day this year? It's the 3rd,
4th of September.
Yeah, it's Monday the 4th.
it's the day before that one.
We always meet the day after Labor Day.
Yeah, it's not this year, okay.
So
September.
So August is a,
it's the 1st and the 15th.
Correct.
And we will be meeting on the 18th, so, I think the logical one would be the 15th, because they would be spaced more evenly, but, we can wait on that one for a couple months, right?
We can wait until the next meeting.
All right, so if people want to think about it, or you want to just,
I'm not here on August 15th, I know
You're in
that.
Maine, right?
I'm in Maine.
Mike?
so we could do the 1st.
Yeah.
It'd be the 18th and the 1st, that's still 2 weeks apart.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna, either way.
Sure. Eliminate August
So the
15th.
suggestion now is to eliminate July 4th and
Yeah.
August 15th.
August 15th. So let's go with that unless somebody has some sort of change in a week or 2.
And if it comes close, we also have alternates that can
Yeah.
fill in. And then Darren, you're also not here next meeting?
Correct, so there's 2, one is next week, and then the other one is June 20th.
Okay. So do you want to wait for day of the next week, or you just want to do a motion right now to amend the meeting schedule, canceling July 4th, 2023 and August 15th, 2023?
Well,
We're going to wait for him next week to
yeah, see what David
make him the
says.
chairman so we can,
Yeah. Let's wait until David, just in case he has some other
All right,
input.
so that'll be on the agenda for next meeting. The proposed amendment to the meeting schedule is canceling July 4th and August 15th.
All right. Last item on the agenda is 1 East Main Street.
So
All right, 1 East.
this was a
Market
request Obviously, there was some time in between from this request where exploration and research was done. And this was diligently done by Miranda here to find this folder amongst the boxes for the different cellular sites in the village. So this, from what we've researched, is when the original roof-mounted cellular site was installed on top of 1 East Market Street, or what we know as the Rhinebeck department store. There's the building permit application signed by Aldinga, who is no longer with us.
He's not?
Aldinga is
Died
deceased.
a long time ago.
Is that right?
And as the file was further looked through, there is no planning board minutes, there is no planning board application, there is no evidence that it came before the planning board 20 years ago.
I remember it coming before the planning board. But I don't think I was on the board in 2000. I think I started in 2001, but maybe I'm wrong on that.
As far as I know, Louis Turpin was the chair,
He was the chair when I first came on.
and Ward Stanley was on the board. He is also deceased. So the sources to try to locate further information about this is limited and small.
No site plan, huh?
There is an explanation in there, engineering plans that show the antenna, how it's mounted on the roof, and things like that. This documents minus the plans were scanned and sent to the planning and zoning attorney. So she has the ability to review it, as well as to look at the FCC law, and as well compare it to, what is existing now, or what was existing then.
Rather than try to find old documents that are going to be hard to find, can we simply not just photo date what was there at some point and what's there today, and say there was a change made that didn't come to the planning board? I mean, couldn't we just have a photo from 2010 that somebody took at Sinterklaas, and a photo from today, and say these are clearly different enclosures, and the second one didn't come to us regardless of what was approved?
So, I don't know, that would be a question for legal. I know when I've tried on Google Maps, it's dated to, I think, 2012, and from the street view, obviously, what this cabinet is, or what's also referred to as a stealth, is not there.
So there you go.
It's not
From
there in
the street.
2012.
From the street. However, when you look at the aerial, there is a cabinet up there for the amount of antennas at that time. So the permit that was filed in 2020, 2021 was for antenna swap and maintenance.
I'm going to say that term maintenance, in my mind, is what they're considered this giant fake brick wall that's not even attached in a corner. Because it's 2021 is when they're getting a permit, and it's during COVID, who knows how long into 2021 or even 22 before they actually did it, and that's relatively recent.
I mean, the one other documents we can locate is there was a building permit pulled in 2014 where the same word usage was on that permit that was approved by the building inspector at that time, who was also deceased, that said it was cabinet maintenance and antenna maintenance.
I'm gonna say that time-wise, from my recollection, that sounds about right. 2014, putting up the little fake brick, and 21, enlarging the fake brick.
And so 2014, those minutes are accessible. I do have access to
I
those.
would think that it was put up well before 14 or 12.
So I looked from January 2014 to December 2014, and there's no application, there's not even discussion
Right.
of T-Mobile or anyone coming before the board at that time.
Well, it looks to me like, I haven't gotten through this whole thing, but it looks like the application was first suggested in 2000, and the installation was done somewhere around 2002. Because that's when you have a letter from the person proposing a installation. And they have logistic plans of where they're gonna put the crane and all that sort of stuff. And I was on the board in 2001, I'm pretty certain. So it may have taken a while before this actually got processed. Because I remember approving it because I fought for the chimney approach.
I'm gonna agree with you now, because I was on the board in 2014, and I have no recollection of anything with that thing, so yeah, it is earlier.
And I remember fighting for the brick and putting a little cornice around the top that would somewhat match the color of the building cornice, so it looked
They
like.
never did.
Which they never did. And we complained about that, and they said, well,
And that would be after 2014, John. That's when you joined?
no, 2001.
2001.
Yeah, I think this was done soon after I was on the board. That's my memory. It was like really one of the first few things I had worked on. So a lot of these documents are from 2002 and 2003. So I have a feeling they applied for it and they didn't install it until like 2002 or something like that. Because that's when these liability insurance start, 2003. Building permit 2003. So that's probably when they installed it.
Jeff Christensen here with his VHS recorder back then.
Reel to reel.
2003, I don't know.
But no site plan to document what it actually looked like. So we have to find an old photo. I looked through my photos and I couldn't find it, so the only thing I found was aerials with a shadow to show what it looked like in terms of.
That's the
I mean,
only
that's
thing that.
basically a square,
Oh, yeah,
you know,
narrow
now it's
square.
a giant,
Yeah, it's a completely different. And there is a law, and I'm not a lawyer, but as part of my job, I have reviewed several wireless facilities down in Beacon. And there's what they call a eligible facilities application or something to that effect. And it says if you're using an existing pole and you're not gonna dimensionally increase the height or the width of the thing, you can swap equipment or add equipment as long as you don't change the overall dimensions. And that means it just does not require any sort of review. It's preempted by federal law that those sorts of applications can be done. But changing it from a narrow chimney-like configuration to a full-blown half a story up there doesn't match that qualification.
I'm thinking maybe ask David and Mike Frazier, the Historical Society, because, for example, it seems to me a couple of years ago, Mike Frazier did a presentation called A Walk Through Rhinebeck. And if there's a video of that we could clip, that a view is included in the walk, we could clip a photo out of that. Or they may have something that has, videos or pictures.
I'm also thinking Jeremy Monaco was always flying his drone around the village.
Oh, yeah?
Bagel Shop
How,
Jeremy.
how recently?
He's been doing it for about 5 or 6 years now,
Yeah.
so if this has happened that recently, I bet you he has some
Yeah,
good
I
drone
just saw
shots.
some drone shots
That might,
somewhere online. I can't remember where I saw it.
Probably Jeremy. I mean, Jeremy's got ridiculous amounts of people that follow his account for his photography and his drone videos and his...
you know Jeremy?
Yeah, I'll ask him. Yeah.
That's I think that's probably a potential, if we can find some videos somewhere. that
It's
somebody-
amazing how much
Sunrise
paperwork
and-
we have
Yeah,
on the installation and nothing on the approval. Oh, there we go, there's a site plan. This is 02.
I cannot find a stamp from Louis Turpin, John.
Roof plans.
So there it shows. These are the existing chimneys,
Yeah.
and there's the proposed one. That's the dimensions of it, at least we can get off that.
What's the scale here? 3/16 equals 1 foot. 3/16.
yeah, but is that a reduction of a 2 by 3 foot sheet that you're looking at?
Yeah, we don't know that for sure. But I would assume,
That's like 4 by 4. If that's correct.
That's not big enough.
It might be 8 by 8 though, it might be a 50%. Check it on the scale block at the bottom, see if it matches.
oh yeah. No, the original size in inches. That didn't make any sense to me. There we go.
12 feet high. They got a nice thing that they never made on it.
Yeah,
What you
there's the
asked
nice
for.
little cornice, yeah,
There it is.
yeah,
That's the cornice?
yeah, there's
Yeah.
that's what it originally looked like, and it had a brick, and it wasn't bad. They didn't do this, and I asked for it, and I'm not sure if they ever ended up doing it or not, I can't remember.
I don't think they did.
Remarkably different
So-
than what's up there.
The outcome of this is to try to find in 2002, 2003 minutes to suggest that this did in fact come before the planning board.
Well, I mean, it's in here.
Kind of, file.
Came
But
at
that's
least
not,
It's a building.
that's for the building permit.
Yeah, we don't have minutes to go back that far?
Not digitized.
Oh, we do have minutes.
They are digitized up until 2006, and then everything after that is hard copies.
3 feet?
3-foot square.
3
Imagine
feet.
a nice binder on your bookshelf, just a
No,
nice by date.
no,
Little tabs for the year.
no, it's in a box and probably a file, in a file box, with either a 5 to 10 year gap, so probably
So
it
that's probably
says
the enclosure.
planning board
The
minutes from
3-foot intent.
2000
Okay.
to 2009, 2010,
So we have a 4-foot dimension
or less.
on the box.
Which looks like the aerial, right?
Yeah, so this is the 4-foot by 4-foot, 12-foot tall. That's what was there,
I mean, that thing up there's gotta be, what, 16 by 16 or something?
something.
What about 4 by 12? Boy, that's a stovepipe, huh?
Well, it was designed to look like a
Do you-
chimney.
Do you recall it looking like that?
Yeah, except I don't remember the cornice on
I
it.
don't think they put it on. They did a nice drawing like you asked for, but then it's like,
And then to also find the building permit stuff from 2014.
well, you did find it.
Nice.
Yeah, so if we had minutes to prove that it needed a site plan then, or when it was approved by a site plan,
Okay.
we could suggest that this is not an eligible facilities request, and so therefore they have to come back to the planning board and then go through a stealth evaluation to see if we can make the thing look like it belongs on the building. And I think they could pull it together and put a cornice line on it, and it would look like a bulkhead for an elevator
Yeah.
or a staircase.
Yep.
And it wouldn't look out of place if they had the color that sort of matched the brick and they had a top on it.
What you asked for is just basically nice custom trim and molding that, you know, I didn't get a good carpenter.
Well, I remember asking, why didn't they do the cornice? And they said, oh, we'll check with them, and then things fall through.
Tell him what he wants to hear.
So what's the deal then? You're gonna see if you can find the paper or the digitized?
We're gonna look down, I can tell you, Jeff, nothing is digitized prior to 2006.
Okay.
Nothing's been scanned. It's all in boxes and file folders separated by year. So, we will,
I would look in 2001,
2001,
but
I'm sure this
if you
is
don't
all
find
gonna be,
2001, then look
it's all
at,
gonna be in the same box. So
Yeah.
2001, 2002, 2003
Yeah.
for the minutes. And also try to look for the building permit application from 2014.
Yeah, I'll ask David in fact, I'll look through if my memory serves me, if there is a video of a walk through the village and there's something in the video, or if your friend maybe has that, we could clip it.
but it's more important, since we know what the dimensions are now,
Yeah,
it's more important that we find the evidence that it was approved by a site plan. That's what's really critical, not, because we know it used to be there. It'd be nice to have a picture to know whether the
Yeah.
cornice ever got built or not. But maybe we don't want to know that. Might not help our argument.
there's nothing else. I got one other thing I want to ask about, and maybe Michael Gee knows this, because he walks around a lot. This is on Beach Street.
Oh, yeah, mozzarella sets.
Yeah. I recall going through this, and look at that skinny little glass front door,
Yes.
and what they put around it is like wooden interior ceiling crown molding that juts out like 4 inches at and this is like at a 45-degree angle here. It looks
That's really odd.
very bizarre.
They were supposed to put in steps and a little portico over it, as I remember.
Yeah,
I remember the steps, I don't remember.
well, could that be even a legal door? I mean, is that door even wide enough to be?
If it was existing, it could have been.
They were putting a new door there, as I remember.
Yeah, I don't remember saying.
The
a
door was
glass
on the
panel
side of
door.
the building.
Well, there was windows.
I
Two
think there was a
windows.
window there, yeah.
Right.
It may be that the crown molding is covering up part of the door.
You guys should still have their stuff, because they were here
It wasn't that long.
last summer
Yeah,
in August.
Yeah.
You guys should still have, and it's a North Parsons Street address.
okay.
It's not Beach Street.
I'll
It's
see
North
if I
Parsons.
can-
I believe it's 17 North Parsons Street.
Yeah, it's on North Parsons.
Yeah, and we should have the electronic copy of the PDFs.
Yep.
I'm gonna look for that.
As far as I know, they have not gotten
Well, they're still working on
a
it.
CO.
Yeah.
They still have building permit.
So it might have been they put this up for the winter because they couldn't get a contractor to pour the steps or whatever.
Yeah, but I'm hard pressed to think we would say, yeah, put a glass panel door in the front of that.
No, we wouldn't say that, but it might be temporary until the
Yeah.
door, the custom door is,
I'd like to think that. Oops. Well, I'll look at that.
Go back, check it out, see
Yeah.
the dimensions, see what Frank, talked about with you guys and whatnot. There might even be video, because I think we were still on Zoom.
Yeah. If we were, then there would be.
When they were here, but I can look back and get you specific dates from the agendas.
Yeah,
Jeff.
okay, great, and then I'll see what I can find. Thanks. That's all I have.
I have something that, well, I don't know if it's gonna make you guys nervous or, but I had a conversation with Seth Stickle today about 42 Mulberry Street, and it's looking like they are getting ready to come back to you guys for formal application. So I'm gonna go out on a limb and suggest that they might be here next meeting, May 16th, to start the process, and obviously you'll hear them then, and then you guys can schedule a public hearing and move on with the process from there, but that's the latest I have of planning related
After
items.
digging into all that historical stuff and walking around and talking with other people, you know, I find it hard to agree to demolish that building. I could agree to, you know, expand the building, even to have a shed dormer on the top or something to make it more livable. But I hate to see it knocked down because it is now recognized, or will be soon recognized, as part of the historic district. So it's hard to justify, because then anybody can come in and say, well, it's just a 40s building, we can knock it down, right? So, I don't know.
I'm of a different opinion. I think it's extremely modest, and there's nothing of any outstanding quality to it. And I look at the two houses that are on my street that were both demolished before we were in, and both houses that are now there look really old, look really good, and they're a vast improvement of what's there. And, you know, it was the economics of what was there when the new owners bought them, and they go, oh my God, you know, and they just basically said it's better for what will replace it to just make it go away, you know. And I don't even think there's pictures of it because they were so bad. Nobody ever wanted to look at them, and you know. And I just, you know, I look at a family that's been here and they're aging and they want to age in place, and the technologies that are now out there that were not available when this house was built, you know, would be, you know, I look at what's being done at the end of Platt. All of those houses are improved from what was there a year ago. And I could see that the Stickle house would be, you know, an improvement.
So what they showed us wasn't an improvement.
Yeah.
So that's why, so I agree with both of you, depending on what
Yeah, I
they
mean,
put forth as the future plan.
It can be worked.
Right. You know, if they're gonna put something horrific in its place, I'm all in favor of let's
You know,
invest in the current
when
asset.
the original historic district was put in, I think there's been maybe 5 demolitions of what was here in the 1970s. And one of them was where your house was, and I wasn't on the board, but I heard that was pretty contentious of, you know, a 3-2 vote maybe, I don't know.
Yeah,
It was
it
close.
was,
And
yes.
your house is beautiful, and it's an improvement. My wife worked in what used to be there because that was religious education. And the other one, which would have been next to Dorothy's house, that was taken down in the middle of a night on a weekend because Frank Stortini got in tight with the priest and he didn't want it, and it's just quick, take it down. And it was done on a Saturday. I don't even remember that one, but, you know.
Where was that?
It's where the statue of Mary is in front of, there was a house there that was,
Yeah.
Catholic Church owned it, and
Yeah.
so,
So anyway, we'll have to see what they come up with,
Yeah.
but it better be damn good, that's all I want to say. Because I think the only way we can justify it, because when I read the nomination of those 40s houses on Mulberry Street, the reason they were considered not necessarily architectural gems, but they were part of the violet industry
Yeah.
in that neighborhood, and those were the workers' houses who worked in the violet greenhouses. And so there was a sort of a historic element to the houses that were built up in that area in the 40s, when the violet industry was sort of coming to its peak. So there is a case to be made that those, if they maintain the porch and, like their neighbors, just put in a rear shed dormer or an addition off the back, they could keep the house and they could still modernize it. And the whole thing about the steps up, you know, you can do ramps
Yeah,
in the back of the building.
sure.
So, anyway, we'll have to see what they come
Yeah,
up
I
with.
think
But
we'll have to see what they come up with.
I think the only way we can justify it is if it's really good and really compatible with all its neighbors.
Yeah, I recall when they went over the details of that, they were kind of stuck on the design and the elevations of the house had to be that way because of the way that they wanted to do the stairwell in the center of the house. And we said, well, there's lots of ways to do that.
Yeah, you
And
can-
you could do it this way,
And you
not
can
that
gut
way.
rehab the whole interior and keep
Yeah,
the front of the
yeah.
house.
Well, I guess we'll see then.
Yeah. Okay, anything else?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Okay. Thank you.